Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie, and today I'm going to be showing you Crack's upcoming release called their Seasonal Behavior Collection. First of all, I do want to give a big thank you to Cracked Polish for sponsoring today's video. So while that means that I'm being paid to swatch and share these with you all, my thoughts and opinions are all honest and my own, the same as with my non-sponsored videos. But anyway, the Seasonal Behavior Collection is a 6-piece lineup inspired by all things fall, and alongside that I also have their Jelly of the Month as well as 2 new essential releases from them, their matte top coat and their new Cuticle Oil. So as always, I will save some more of my thoughts as well as availability on these for the end of the video after comparisons. For now, let me just show you the swatches. First up, we have Mud Puddle, which is a cool brown jelly. So I was really excited for this one because you know I love brown polishes and this is the perfect time of year for them. But the formula was just okay. It didn't really impress me so much. I don't think the first coat looked that bad. It obviously is very sheer as expected for a jelly, but I got decent-ish coverage. It just wasn't the most even, but I was surprised at how uneven it was on the second coat, though admittedly maybe I just overworked it, maybe I did too thin of a coat. So depending on your application, you might be able to get away with this in just 2 coats, maybe if your nails are shorter, but I found that I needed a third coat and it definitely built up a lot better this way. Next up, we have a new topper from Cracked. This is called Pile of Leaves, which is a magenta, orange, green, and gold multi-chrome metallic flake topper. This is super stunning, whether it's worn on its own as seen here, or of course layered over some shades in the collection or over black and white. Either way, the colors are just so eye-catching, and I feel like it had the perfect amount of flakies in just 1 coat, where you don't need to go back and fish for more, but you might need to finagle them a little bit with the application, but it was a really nice ratio overall. Up next is Unripe, which is described as a smoky black gray with a forest green magnetic shimmer. This had another amazing formula. It was slightly on the crelly side, but also very pigmented, as you can see. So I found that I only needed 2 coats to reach full coverage, especially when doing the cat eye effect. I think it does have a dark enough base that your nail line is pretty obscured for the most part. Maybe if you are looking close enough, or if you see this in direct sunlight, you may be able to make it out, but I just didn't think a third coat was necessary for this, and I really loved the darker base color. It just provided a nice contrast to that bright green magnetic, which also has a beautiful subtle shift to a light, almost sky blue, and of course this looked super plush in the velvet effect. The next shade we have is Berry Basket, which is a deep blue crelly base with purple and orange shimmers. So I was kind of taken aback by how bright this applied on the nails, because in the bottle I thought it was going to be a very deep indigo or purple sort of color, but you definitely get this bright, almost cobalt blue on the first coat at least, but I would say it kind of deepens up to maybe more of a midnight blue in the second coat. And similar to the last shade, even though it is slightly on the crelly side, it is really dark where I don't think you can make out your visible nail line. At least I couldn't, so I just left this in 2 coats, and yeah, I thought the color was really beautiful. I thought the shimmer had a really pretty shift to green, but it is a little bit on the subtle side where it's not as glowy. Then we have It's Corn, a yellow jelly packed with gold and yellow shimmers. So this had another super smooth and easy to apply formula that was maybe the most even coverage of everything so far. But since it is a jelly, you'll still see some visible nail line with this even after 3 coats because it is such a light shade. Though I will say it is pretty obscured from all the shimmer, which I thought was really glowy in this one. The shimmer itself does have a strong yellow color, but I feel like there's something in this shade that kind of leans a little chartreuse to me, which I think will be more obvious during comparisons. And rounding out the collection is Flower Pressing, a pink jelly base filled with pink and rose aurora shimmers. No surprise, this was my favorite from the collection. It is such a pretty and bright shade of pink, very similar in formula and application to the Lash shade, where it's even but sheer enough to still show visible nail line after 3 coats. So if that's not your thing, you could always use a blurring base or layer it over a sheer pink to help increase the coverage, but I love the ethereal, dainty look of this one, and especially how the shimmers shift to orange in extreme light. I thought it was really passable on 2 coats, but doing the third really brightened up the pink base in this. October's jelly of the month is called Hot Honey, which is described as an amber jelly. So I knew I was going to love this one for the inspo alone, but this honestly had one of the best jelly formulas from Cracked yet. And I feel like that's often true for these sort of Prugly shades, but yeah, this one was just so incredibly pigmented and incredibly even coverage on the first coat alone. It's also one of the more glassy jellies where I would say the visible nail line will not be obscured no matter how many coats you do, which as a reminder is kind of the whole point of jellies, but some of them can be a little bit more milky than others. Cracked has 2 new essentials coming out this month. The first is their matte top coat, which I'll be swatching over Berry Basket and showing over a few other shades. So I decided to leave the drying time in here, though it is sped up a bit, but I was honestly really surprised at how fast this dried down to a true matte finish. One of my pet peeves when it comes to matte top coats is that some of them just dry to an almost satin finish where it's not matte, but this one definitely delivers on providing that negative shine. So it has my stamp of approval for a matte top coat, or at least it gave a really great first impression because I haven't done a full wear test for this. And lastly, we have their new Cuticle Oil, which is a hydrating daily oil blend consisting of jojoba, sweet almond, avocado, argan, vitamin E, and rice oil. So I would say this is a very lightweight kind of oil blend where it doesn't feel super heavy or greasy, and it absorbs pretty quickly too. A little goes a long way where you don't need to dip back into the bottle or even just apply as much as I did because I feel like I just had a lot on my nails. Though as usual, I do rub the excess oil down my fingers in place of using lotion, so it works out either way. It doesn't say this is unscented, but I did pick up a light almond or avocado scent, probably from the oils themselves, but there's definitely no additional fragrance. And here is my skittle of the seasonal behavior collection, or at least photos of it, in natural, bright, indirect lighting. I'm showing 2 coats of each with top coat, with Unripe being magnetized in the cat eye effect on my middle finger. And I also have 1 layer of pile of leaves over 2 coats of mud puddle on my ring finger. Moving on to comparisons, we're starting with Mud Puddle and looking at it next to Liquid Smoke, which came out in their Creams, Crullies, and Jellies collection somewhat recently, but that one is much too light. For some closer brown jellies, I first pulled out Cirque's Cocoa Jelly on the left, which is a bit too light and also a little too warm. So for a darker option, I pulled out Bon Bon, but I forgot how red toned that one was. If anything, that's more of a maroon shade with a little bit of a brown undertone, but predominantly red. So I think the closest brown jelly to Mud Puddle is Cirque's Mahogany Jelly. At least they looked more similar in the bottle. On the nail, I think you can tell that Mahogany is still a little too warm compared to how neutral Mud Puddle is. Or at least it looks neutral to me. I know it's described as cool toned. And lastly, here's Mud Puddle next to a photo of Chocolate Gram, which hopefully you can see is much darker and cooler toned. I definitely prefer the color of Mud Puddle. Next for pile of leaves, of course, I'm showing this next to Holo Taco's Fallen Flake Taco, which is pretty much the closest to being a dupe. It has a very similar color mix with the multi-chrome metallic flakies, though I think they are just generally a bit larger in cracked. Maybe there's a little bit more size variance in Holo Taco. Next for Unripe, I don't have another magnetic like this, so I thought the closest shade from Cracked at least was Vintage Lampshade, which is a green, shimmery, multi-chrome kind of color. It's kind of hard to tell, but I think it does have a similar dark gray sort of base color, but even the shade of green in Vintage Lampshade is a little bit darker, or just more of a true green. It's a little bit more yellow-green in Unripe. Next for Berry Basket, I knew I wanted to see this next to Midnight Phase, which is the Midnight Jelly from Cracked. They definitely are really similar. I would say that Midnight Phase is just a little bit darker, though I thought maybe I could just recreate Berry Basket by doing one coat of flower pressing, and it kind of has a similar vibe, but not really a dupe. For other blues with a pink shimmer, I first pulled out Mooncat's Mercurys Tears, which I thought was going to be a lot closer, but as you can see, it is just way too light and bright. So then I pulled out Mooncat's Cyborg, which is more of a true multi-chrome, but still has a fiery sort of shimmer, though the base in that one is a little bit more muted, kind of like a navy. And lastly, I thought that this might be close to Prism Parade's Leviathan, even though it obviously has a very different colored shimmer. The base color felt familiar, though as you can tell, these are just not comparable. Next for It's Corn, I of course have to show this next to Gilded Edges and Crop Dusted, both of which are retired, cracked, shimmery yellows. Gilded Edges is closer in terms of finish because Crop Dusted is more of a true crelly with a dainty shimmer added. They'll look more color accurate here on the nail, but I would say that Crop Dusted and Gilded Edges just have a little bit more warmth to the base color, I guess. There's again something about It's Corn that leans a little bit cooler. And I, of course, have to show this next to Mooncat's Demeter's Harvest, which was their corn-inspired polish. This is another shimmery yellow, but this one does have a noticeable green shimmer as well, so it's not exactly a dupe. I think the base is also a shade or two lighter, but it's close enough. Next for flower pressing, I had a hard time finding close enough comparisons for this. I think the closest pinks from Cracked are Raspberry Glaze on the left and Kissing Cupcakes on the right, but both of those are a few shades lighter or more pastel and with different colored shimmers too. I thought the closest to this was going to be ILNP's Petals, which is a very similar bright hot pink with almost the same exact pink to orange shifting shimmer. They might look really close in the bottle, but the main difference is on the nail, where Petals just has a much more saturated base color, while flower pressing can almost pass as a topper, but it's very buildable at the same time. So the bases are different, but the shimmer looks the same. It just might be a little smoother or finer and Cracked. Moving on to Hot Honey, here it is quickly next to Mustard, which is the mustard jelly. That one's obviously much more yellow, even though it does have a slight brown undertone. I would say the closest is I Am What I Am, which is more of this pumpkin, sweet potato sort of shade. So it's a little bit brighter and maybe more orange, a little bit less in that brown territory, or I guess you could see a little bit more yellow in Hot Honey. The difference is definitely most noticeable on the first couple of coats, but on coat 3 I feel like they do look a little similar, although in real life I could tell a difference, but I don't know, I guess it's just subjective whether you need both or not. And lastly, here it is next to Cirque's Mustard Jelly, which of course is a little bit more of that yellow mustard sort of shade, but it is much closer in value to Hot Honey than Crack's Mustard was. It also has that same super pigmented and very even coverage kind of formula too. Lastly, for the matte top coat, I wanted to compare it to a couple of my other favorite matte top coats, including ILNP's Frosted Glass and Mooncat's Matte Made in Hell. These two were some of my favorites because they dried down to a matte finish, and as you can see, Crack's matte top coat is just as matte, but I noticed that it dried down faster. I also don't know if I just didn't wait long enough for ILNP, but it looks a little satiny. And lastly, I'm going to be comparing it to Holo Taco's matte taco, which is my first time trying it. I decided to swatch both of these over black, and I thought they were both very matte, but I did see some specks in Cracked, and I also noticed that Holo Taco almost looks like it has a slightly rubberized visual texture. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Crack's upcoming releases. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on these and what you're excited for, because overall, I thought they were nice. Starting with the Seasonal Behavior collection, I mean, I wasn't super crazy about the collection theme, I guess, or maybe just the color palette. There's something about the shades that doesn't feel super cohesive to me, but like I like the inspo and I like the polishes individually, if that makes sense. If anything, I would say my favorite release is the Jelly of the Month, which is maybe surprising because it is kind of a Prugly shade. But again, I love hot honey and I thought this just had the best formula. I really don't know what it is about these certain like Prugly kind of jellies that always have the most pigmented but very even coverage formula. I honestly wish like every jelly could have that same formula. It's just so perfect in my opinion. So yeah, definitely really loving that one. And speaking of the jellies, with Mud Puddle, I was excited to see that it's like a remake of Chocolate Gram because I didn't love that initial shade. I always thought it was a little too dark and cool toned, almost going into like that dark gray territory where you don't really see a lot of brown. So I definitely wasn't really upset to see that one be retired, and I love the idea of like, you know, revamping some previously retired shades. But at the same time, or I guess like on the other hand, I also wish that they would just bring back certain shades that were previously retired. Like I know they didn't specify that It's Corn is supposed to be a remake of the previous shimmery yellows from Cracked, specifically Gilded Edges, but I can't help but feel like it's supposed to be a replacement because obviously Gilded Edges was the other sheer shimmery kind of yellow that was retired, and now we have this one. And like I mentioned during the comparison portion, I feel like I just prefer Gilded Edges. There's something about the tone, or I guess shade of yellow, that I thought was really flattering. But you know, that's obviously just my opinion. Maybe as more people will try this shade, it'll be a better seller than Gilded Edges was. So it's definitely an interesting thing to kind of see. Like I'm always curious about the back end of, you know, what are the best sellers of not even just collections, but in like a catalog in general. Because I obviously understand that, you know, smaller brands can't just have every polish in stock for the rest of time. So I'd love to hear your thoughts if you just prefer that they bring back something that was discontinued, or if you like the idea of them revamping shades like with Mud Puddle or even Skelly Bones from the last collection. Then for the essentials, like I said, I was really impressed with the matte top coat. I know it's still pretty early to say that it's like a new favorite, especially because I don't really reach for matte top coats super often, but because of how fast it dried down, how matte it dried down, and the price point, I would say that it really moves up to the top of my list, especially when it comes to a new top coat to recommend to people, because I feel like it's just such a great value. So I am excited to, you know, keep trying it, but I just don't really wear matte nails that often. I wish I was a little more excited to recommend the Cuticle Oil, but you know, as I've mentioned before in like other reviews or in like my nail care routine video, I just prefer oils that are a little bit heavier usually, because my nails are usually very thin and prone to peeling. So I often find that a lot of lightweight oils don't just feel like they're doing enough for my nails. That also could just be, you know, that I'm not applying reapplying enough or often enough throughout the day. So if you are somebody who does constantly reapply cuticle oil, this one is probably going to work really great for you because again, it is very lightweight, it absorbs super fast, and it's nice in that way. And honestly, I probably would still recommend it just because it is so affordable for how much you're getting. So, you know, you might as well try it out for yourself, but it's not a bad oil by any means, just not one of my like top favorites, you know? And lastly, while I don't obviously have this in the video, I do want to mention that Cracked is also going to be coming out with refill bottles for their sticky base coat and their glossy top coat. They're going to be 4-ounce bottles that retail for $32, and they will also come with a regular size bottle of the base or top coat, depending on which one you're getting. As a reminder though, the sticky base coat does contain PVB, which is an ingredient that's kind of known to cause peeling in some people. So just a word of warning if your nails are sensitive to that, but I'm pretty sure Cracked has mentioned that they are working on a PVB-free base coat, but that'll probably come out next year. So if you are interested in grabbing any of these upcoming releases, they are going to be launching next Friday, October 24th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And as a reminder, I am an affiliate with Cracked, so if you want to pick these up while supporting me and my channel, you can shop through the link in my description box or use my code YOGI10 at checkout. Not only does that save you 10% off your order, but it also gives me a small commission. So as always, a big thank you to all of you who do use it and support me through that. And a big thank you to everyone who used it last month during their sale. You guys absolutely showed up and it just means so much. So yeah, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope that you leave it a like if you enjoyed it or found it helpful, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!